We put the car together for SEMA and then had to take the car back apart again. It was one of those kind of
Yeah.
So
I mean, SEMA.
All right, so before I get too far into this, it's worth noting we record these conversations virtually via Zoom. And on Zoom, there's some settings that if you record to the cloud, you get the Brady Bunch view with everybody's face. And if you record on your computer, which I did last night with Scotto, I end up getting just images of me. So the conversation with Scotto covered a lot of really cool stuff that I do not want to miss it. So we're going to run it anyway. Apologies to those who get the video feed. You're going to get a lot of imagery of me.
Well, I mean, I got I don't know how long you have.
I mean, I've got probably an hour. So
Okay.
I have a 5 o'clock, but I can push it off. It's just a phone call. So
Okay. I know we can go down like rabbit holes of Vortex and other stuff like that. Or maybe we do that another time. Whatever.
Dude, I've got the deepest of rabbit holes, so no worries.
Well, let me go then with the stuff I gotta get done. So we're with a magazine, we're doing a focus on old cars. I think I IM'd you around like SEMA, where like we wanted to feature your cars. Yep. So I am trying to jam them at least into the spring issue, but your car's apart right now.
Yeah.
So maybe we make it a little bit more about Brian, a little partially about the car, and we go more deep into the car later.
Isn't the cutoff date like Monday for the spring issue?
No, I can push back further.
Our completion date for the car is March 15th.
March 15th.
That's when we're filming like around March 15th. So the car needs to be done by then.
Got it.
That's so figure the car will probably be done, the first, at least like to a point where you can shoot it like then. We put the car together for SEMA and then had to take the car back apart again. It was one of those kind of
situations.
So
I mean, SEMA, right? They're not real cars.
Like it had to be there and look kind of finished, but
yeah,
there was literally things that like I put in parts that like were just placeholders just to get me there.
I'm still kind of in production that week, and then I gotta be at my upload on the printer by the 21st. So like if I can get the photos that week and Dennis can get them to me.
Okay. I don't see the car not being done by then, because we've got like at first it was just me working on it, and now like people are like, okay, you're past deadline, so like now like I got all the guys in the shop helping, so it's actually gonna get done.
Are you changing it much from SEMA?
It's really just doing everything nicer. So like doing things like building a pedal box instead of using the factory pedal box, because the factory pedal box made sense until I put the seat on the ground and the pedals sit like at a 45-degree angle and I have to like lift my feet up to get on them. It's just things like that. When you're done building a car, you're like, that's not right. It's that type of stuff. And it's just all the like making all the finishing touches really nice. And there's a big argument now as to whether or not it should be rear mount radiator. And if we should just like, do that now, but like, that's a big do that now moment. It's not like an easy thing. And it's like, okay, now you're talking about removing the rear glass and like building like air, and I was like, can we just make that V2, like just get to it later? But the guys in my shop, like I'm a very pragmatic builder, like, okay, this is what I'll do, and they're like, well, while we're here, we may as well just rip it all out. And like, like I had the stock Audi steering column in there, and they're like, you have 315s up front, like you can't have that, you need like this race column instead. Not to complain, but sometimes you just want to get it done and get it on the road, so.
Yeah, well, I'd imagine you're in this unique space, probably not a bad thing, where like you've got these cars you want to build, and then there are the expectations that go with Hoonigan or the YouTube channel or whatever that you can't roll in.
Yeah, I mean, are we live now? Are we going? Is this part of the show?
It is, but I could. I can edit whatever, move stuff around.
I didn't want to like give out all this good stuff and then be like, okay, now let's say the same thing again.
Well, that's why I started recording right away, because like if we actually get into cool stuff, I can move it in. Right.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, let's start the show.
Well, all right. So we're talking about your Coupe Quattro. And where would you mentioned something to me that I'm curious about though, like you want to do, or this talk of doing a rear mount radiator, where like on the Quattro, that would be under that spoiler, right? But where would you put that?
Yeah,
on
so like, I mean, on, obviously the Sport Quattro was sort of built to do that, right? I mean, that was kind of the way that it was constructed. The On the Coupe Quattro, it suffers the same problem that other sort of
hatchback,
that era cars dealt with, which was that the radiator actually doesn't sit in the front, right? It sits to the side of the engine, because the engine's longitudinal, right? So it sits off to the side, and obviously you have a ton of heat there. Once you put a massive intercooler in front of it, now you're slowing down the flow that's coming into it. So all the guys who run really big horsepower cars, they put it all out back, right? And they usually will remove the rear glass and create like kind of a Nakaduck scoop there, or maybe one that comes in off the side window. And I quite frankly, I didn't want to go that route, but Soupy, who's like our lead fabricator and mechanic here, is just telling me like, the car is gonna run hot. You're gonna be struggling with this. We may as well just do it now. And I feel like my entire life has been living in the like, well, while we're here, you might as well do it now, which is why I have 23 cars and like none of them run.
Yeah.
Man, you've got quite the collection of random photos here. That photo that you have pulled up right now, I think I posted on Audi World in like 2005.
Oh, no joke.
Yeah,
that's cool. The couple of these are the ones we had for when we did that like the autobiography, like the list of all the cars you had.
Oh yeah,
these were a couple you gave me. So like I just pulled from those, and then we get down to like it built, right?
Yeah,
that was at your club days. But all right, so walk me through. You've had it a long time, 8 years. More?
I bought it in 2004.
Oh shit.
So the background on this car was simple. Like I was a Volkswagen kid. Grew up kind of like my first car ever was a Volkswagen, right? I got a Volkswagen Mark III Golf. I got a 1995 and 1997 because I wanted a Mark I, but my parents didn't think it was safe. So
you got the airbag.
They were like, we'll match every dollar you can save to buy a better car than this Mark I that I wanted at the time, and because it has airbags. The Mark III had airbags, so I bought it and then immediately put a Momo steering wheel in, defeating the whole purpose of my parents' safety thoughts around me buying a Mark III.
Which makes total sense. 2 liter.
Yeah, and I then got heavily into kind of not just Volkswagens, but the whole scene around it. I started a car club called Auto Krieg. And was like heavily into the Volkswagen thing, and I was driving down I forget the name of the road, but a road in Long Island, and I drove past a body shop, and there was a Coupe Quattro sitting in the back of the body shop, and I had never seen one before, right? There's only 1,700 of them imported,
right.
So, not a super popular car. I never saw one, and to me, it was like Audi's version of the Corrado.
Yeah.
Right? I now know it shares not a single part, but looking at it, I was like, well, this is an all-wheel drive Corrado that is, in my opinion, much better looking.
Yeah.
I was like, I really, this is so cool. So for like the next year or so, I kind of just, sat there kind of dreaming about it. And in 2004, I got my first like real job working at Rides magazine. And I figured I would treat myself. And I went and spent $3,500 on a Coupe Quattro that, ran and drove. And honestly, it was Lago blue, which I didn't even like the color. I really wanted a pearl white one because I think pearl white Audis in that era were so cool, right?
They were. Yeah.
So I really wanted that. And I always told myself I would eventually paint the car or do something. And now Lago blue has kind of become my color. Now I own multiple Lago blue cars, but it was this car that I really wanted. I drove it for about 6 months, and then I started taking it apart, and I finally got it back on the road during the pandemic. So just if you could do that math, 2004, 2020 was when I actually got it back on the road, and that was just really kind of getting it back on the road, like somewhat stock. I had done a bunch of suspension stuff to it, but it was pretty much a stock motor.
So like that's that one. That's back on the road.
That was the day I got it back on the road. Yep. So, pretty simple S2 bumper, B4 carbon hood, 5-lug S2 swap, Porsche brakes, KWs, like, a bunch of different suspension parts from 034 and a bunch of other different people. But Mance mounts for the guys who know and remember Mance from back in the day. But like a bunch of just like random kind of parts, but still no real performance goodies. It was still just a stock 160 horsepower inline five.
So, I mean, that was the problem with them, right? I remember, so kind of like you, I Corrado and this car were together. Like when I was 16, I remember going to, or thereabouts, right? I'm in high school, and I went to Auto House, which is like the Audi Lancaster now, right? Near where I am in Pennsylvania. And they had a Corrado. I can't remember. I think these were G60s at the time. It was before the VR was out, so it wasn't that fast either, right? Like that car. But I remember walking, like seeing that on one side of their showroom, and then there was this Coupe Quattro on the other. Like walking past, like, oh, like maybe I can talk my parents someday into letting me into one of these. But then at some point, I'll make my own money and trade it and get one of those. I didn't realize both of them were really slow.
Like, I mean, honestly, the Corrado's probably faster.
The G60, it might be.
Probably. I mean, the Coupe was painfully slow. It was a painfully slow car, which is why it's kind of this, like, I think slightly unloved, because even the S2 is like quick, but it wasn't blowing anyone's mind away on how fast it was, right?
Yeah.
But but now this one's gonna be probably pretty fast. We're talking on like low boost 800 horsepower, which seems like a very responsible number. So
it's what is it exactly? LCE built it, I think.
No. So Ken's car was built by LCE.
That's right.
For Quattro. On the Coupe Quattro,
Hank
Iras built. Yeah. So obviously Hank's been building inline fives forever. I've known Hank for almost 20 years now, and he was he's always been doing inline fives, but now he's gotten really popular in the new Daza engine, right? So the modern 07K architecture. But he was really excited to build this because he's like, man, I haven't worked on an older engineering engine in so long that all this new tech has come out for him. So we took my engine, which it's basically out of a 1991 20 valve 200.
Okay, so the 3B.
It's a 3B, yeah. So we took that engine, but added all this new tech to it, right? So it's now drive-by-wire, right? It has, it's obviously, individual spark, things like that, but it also has like individual EGR and all these things so that we can monitor it the way you can monitor a new motor. It's running Cyvex. So the goal is like basically take everything that you would throw at a Daza engine minus the variable valve timing and a few other things, and say, okay, can we take all that tech and make it speak on on the classic motor, right? And make that one work. With the reason being that I could have put an 07K in there, right? I mean, other people have done it, but one, I'd already saved a bunch of parts. Like I had like cool things like MTM manifolds and all of that, and there's just a part of me that like I just wanted it to, when you pop the hood, I wanted it to look somewhat like that era of when I first bought the car and wanted to build something for it, right? But in addition, I just hate to say it, but like the 3B just sounds better. Like there's just this, it's almost because the head design isn't as good as the new head design, so you're like forcing air through it and it makes it all whistle and pop in different ways, and you're getting that because it's actually not as efficient as the new motor. But I'm okay to give up a little efficiency for all the rally car sounds. So that was and this has been a fun project for me because you've got people I've met in the Audi community 15 years ago who have been involved all the way like to this day, right? Like they've been rooting for me to finish this car. So like guys like Hank and like Issam and Dave Pecoraro, like all these guys who like I've been in, I've known in the inline five community have kind of come out of the woodwork to be like, oh, I got this part you need, or hey, you can borrow my radiator. Like everyone's like really helped out. It's been a fun project because it's taken a bunch of us who, to be quite honest, had lost touch with each other over the past 15 years as forums have disappeared and we didn't really spend as much time talking to each other. And now it's like these guys are part of my everyday. I mean, so much so that I hired Dave. Dave now works at Hoonigan.
Oh, really?
Funny how that all came together over projects.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Well, all right. So what else is I gotta get through these cars. Otherwise, I was just gonna ask you about Daza versus old.
Yeah. Okay.
But I got my own issues. But regarding this car, so what else have we? Or first of all, can I get a build list?
Yeah. I mean, I can run off the basics, but like you want me to just send you a build list?
I mean, if you want to roll through it now, otherwise, if you can just send it.
All right, I'll roll through the highlights. So the highlights is 3V engine, built by IROS. It's going to be sort of in the area of 850 to 1100 horsepower. It'll rev to 8,000 on standard, 8,500 on scramble, running a Zona rotor. I forget which spec is in there right now, but it's a footprint turbo, so you can basically change out multiple turbos into the same setup. So I can go from my 800 setup to like a 1200 setup by just swapping out the turbo and then changing the program. So speaking of the tune, Cyvex throughout. So not only is it Cyvex ECU, but I'm also running a Cyvex PDM to control the entire chassis harness and everything in the vehicle. KW ST coilovers all around. The transmission is Drive Sport CA. It's a dog box, and it's going to be attached to an MME paddle shift transmission. So I kind of went all out on that one. That was like, this is what's called project creep. Because when I originally wanted to build this car, I was like 350 horsepower is the goal with an 01 E6 speed. And now it's like full, it's full race car spec. And one of the goals for the car, when I lived back on the East Coast, I grew up in New York. When I lived in the East Coast, I really wanted to race the Pennsylvania Hill Climb Association and the New England Hill Climb Association, because between those two different series, you can race like 12 or 15 races, and living in New York, it's like equidistant to both of them, right?
Right.
Nothing's more than like a 5-hour tow away. So that was when I was working at 0 to 60 magazine, that was my goal, was like build that car, go race hill climb with it. And I moved out here and I was like, well, what am I going to do with the car now? And when I finally built it, I was like, you know what? I'm still going to build it for that. So I think the goal, my parents still live back east. I think the goal will be to ship the car home and go race. I won't be able to race the whole series, but even if I got to run 3 or 4 events, it gives me a reason to go home and, and see my old folks, but it also gives me a reason to finish what the original goal was.
Right. That's cool.
So that's going to be the goal for me, is to go back, race some of those events, and then maybe at some point go run Pikes Peak. So, so because of that, I put a lot of extra safety into the car. So the car has, basically an FIA spec cage, like rally car cage. So it's got like intrusion and, double A bars, things like that. As you become a dad, safety becomes really big all of a sudden.
Yeah, right.
Like 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have cared as much, but you got a reason to come home now. So, fire suppression, all the good safety jazz in there. The biggest race seats ever made. Sparco made a new seat called the Pilot that is so big that other guys at the company, because I'm 6'8", other guys at the company sit in it and the harness holes are at their ears. It's like, you ever see like the seat they have at like, toy stores that like make adults look like kids? It's like that for race seats. So, which was really difficult to get fit in the coupe, right? Because it's not really that big of a car. My buddy Rob Parsons, he runs a company called Cage Kits, and we 3D scanned the whole interior of the car and built like the tightest fitting roll cage. Like the roll cage is literally millimeters off of like most of the points, just to be able to give me as much room in there as possible and create 2 inches of room between my helmet and the roof, and all those kind of things.
So what do you do on the passenger side if you got that?
There'll be a passenger seat as well, because it'll be set up like a rally car. So it's gonna be set up like a tarmac rally car. So, and exterior wise, it's the prior kit, which I think like everyone, that was kind of a really weird kit, right? No one was expecting someone to build a kit for a car that no one has talked about in however long.
Right.
I think the car's 30 years old, and Prior came out and built this kit that like set the internet on fire. Like hypebeast.com was talking about this kit for the Coupe Quattro, and it was so weird to me because it just was like, I didn't even think anyone knew what my car was, let alone having a company like Prior, which builds things like Lamborghini kits, to come out and build this Coupe Quattro kit. So they built that, and I worked with them. So that was, and then to kind of fill out the arches. And I love that kit because if you think about it, I bought a Coupe Quattro because I liked its look. I thought it looked like a Corrado. It was a more mature version of a Corrado. But at the time, I was also shopping at Quattro, and Quattros were like $7,500 back then. I mean,
I know,
think about
crazy,
that.
right?
And to me, $7,500, at 20, 25 years old was just way too much money to spend. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll get the Coupe Quattro. I mean, I kind of regret that now in some ways, but I always would admit that the Quattro was a better looking car than the Coupe Quattro, and especially like the Sport Quattro gave it this look. And I think that this kit really kind of elevated the Coupe Quattro to have a very different aesthetic, right? Like
Yeah.
it really took the parts of the Sport Quattro that made the Sport Quattro stand out. And I know a lot of people think it's like overly done and garish and all that, and that's great. I don't really care. I've got stock body cars too, but it's kind of fun. And to be honest, biggest problem with this car from a performance side is like the biggest tire you can fit on it is like a 235. So now it's got a 315, which is probably too much tire to be quite honest. But it was, it's actually now a car that you can put a ton of power in, and it'll be interesting to see how it actually drives. I'm still to figure that one out, but it was a cool opportunity, and the timing just kind of came at this perfect moment to be like, oh, they just released this really cool kit and you're in the process of building your car, so why not? And
what's cool is
interesting,
like with a lot of body kit companies, it seems like, I mean, who knows how much a lot of these get made, right? But the fact that this is kind of a limited run makes the exclusivity, and the Sport Quattro nods throughout the design are interesting, where there've been, I think I've seen box flares before for these cars, but never kind of this much of a nod towards it, and it really works with the car. Funny though, you mentioned you did a B4 hood swap earlier, and like this totally goes back
to I mean, well, this really made the B3 look right, and then I put the round lights in as a nod to really a mix of my Volkswagen days, right? My Mark III had Votex lights in it. These are Votex lights, but also a nod to kind of rally cars and the rally car aesthetic of like, just putting in round lights. It was just like a big thing in the 90s. You saw it, they did it on a bunch of different cars. And but it was funny, after all this, I swapped back to a B3 front, which I think they did a really good job of making the B3 work well on here.
Yeah, that was what was cool about it, right? Like everybody had been updating cars to B4, right? Like that was just kind of, that was the cooler look. Yeah. And the fact that they kind of flipped the script on it, we're like, no, Sport Quattro, B4 doesn't work on that, right? Yeah. Like, I think it's cool personally. But the other side of it is, it being a Coupe Quattro, it's not as, like if it were an Quattro and it were in decent shape. I'm saying this to the guy who put an RWB kit on a legit turbo. So I'm not, I know this.
Not just a legit turbo, but an Andy L turbo, but continue.
Well, there you go. Thanks for the flex. Good night, everybody. We're done. No, but like that's the thing, right? Like I sweat a lot about, if you have a nice car, do you put it under the knife like that, or like a very collectible or worthy car? And so like I legit, it's not even, it's no Andal turbo, but I've got like a 4000 Quattro that like I can't bring myself to mod because it's too nice. So I bought like a Rochier Quattro. That's kind of my adjustment, right? Like go back to.
No, I get that, because I don't think I would build. I think if I had an Quattro, I would just keep it an Quattro, right? Where like the Coupe Quattro, I don't know. I don't know if it's like a very loved car. I mean, there's one for sale right now down the block for me for $3,000, less than I bought it for in 2004, right? Like it's not a car that went up in value while the rest of them did. And I think it's interesting because this car like caught the eye of a lot of people who were never even aware that this car existed, right? And I always would feel bad because people would talk about Coupe Quattros, and like I would get tagged and post about it. And it was before I built it like this. And there are guys who have built some beautiful Coupe Quattros in America. And like mine was like barely together. But like I became the person because of YouTube that everyone knew as the guy with the Coupe Quattro, right? Like, that's Scotto, right? And I'm like, I don't deserve this. There's guys who have been building these cars forever and have had cool turbo ones in the US for forever. I mean, guys like Ali Goulet have had them since I didn't even have an Audi yet, right? And there's a bunch of really cool stuff out there that the guys have been building, obviously 034 and so on and so on. And like I think that but when this car went through this transformation, it really got people to go, oh man, that's a super cool car. Like I never saw it like that. And there were even guys here at Hoonigan like Hurt, who was like, man, I always thought that car was dumb, but now I think it's really cool. You know, it's like you get that, and I think that's cool. Yeah, I get it. To the purist, I should have kept it as it was, but it's kind of cool to see this what it is. And let's be honest, you know, what is it really worth, kind of thing. But at the same time, I cut the fenders off of my 911. They weren't selling for what they're selling for now.
Well,
so
yeah, I guess that's the question.
I don't know
right?
if I would do it again. You know, I don't know if I would do it again. Age and time. I've got a 1975 Swallowtail, and I'm struggling even just doing a motor swap in it. Like, it's got a 1.5 carb, and it runs. I got it to finally run really good. I've been driving it the past couple of days, and I'm like, I want to put a 16 valve in it, which is like a good. It's obviously not period correct because they didn't exist in 75. It's period correct for my era of Volkswagen tuning, like the early 90s and early 2000s. I mean, mid 90s and early 2000s. But I'm struggling because, like, part of me also just really wants to keep it just as it is. Like, it's a pretty original Survivor car. It's original
great
paint.
color.
Yeah, and it's like you don't want to chop it up. And I've got a couple other Audis that are like that I kind of feel the same way about. Like, I've got a D11 that I just picked up, and you know, part of me wants to just keep it as it is and just keep it as a basic driver, and then the other part of me wants to take my S8 4.2 engine that I've got out of a parts car and put that in there with a manual trans, like, you know. And it's like, and it depends what day it is. Like, some days I'm like, I'll just keep it as it is, and it's just a cool driver. And then other days it's like, no, I want to go completely ham with it, you know. And it's one of those things. Like, I have this Avant that I bought. It's a total basket case, and all of my, like, all the guys here are like, dude, why'd you buy that car? Like, you could have bought something nicer, right? I was like, well, I want to put a V8 D11 wide body on it, right? And I didn't want to start with there only being 149, you know, $220. I didn't want to start with a nice one. I wanted to start with one that needed to be saved. Like, this one, the whole front end has already been changed on it. Like, it's probably been in an accident. Like, this car was probably either going to get parted out, or it was going to, like, you know, get sold to someone else who would have drove it into the ground, or pull the motor out and stick the motor to something else. And you know, I think sometimes, as long as you start with something that isn't too nice, like, it's kind of like, okay, I can go do what I want with this car. You know, not Audi related, but I have a Jaguar E-Type that I bought a few years back. I bought it really cheap, but it's a real beater. It's really, really bad. And the only reason I bought it is because I want to do a resto mod Jag. And if I did that to, like, a nicer one, like, people would just hate me for it. But like, this one is, like, pretty close to being a parts car. And like, there's some kind of fun in, like, saving a car. It's almost like it's like I was saying that I kind of run like a rescue for Audis. Like, I don't buy nice ones to start with. I usually buy pretty beat up ones. Like, I just got a D2 S8 last year that was a impound car. I bought out of the impound, and it just got out of paint, and like, it's really nice now. But like, I bought it for $1,200. It was not nice when I bought it.
So how many cars do you have right now, and then how many Audis? I don't think I'd ever heard about the E-Type. Or is that going to get you in trouble? I don't want to out you.
I think I occasionally, if I do different podcasts, I'll just mention different cars I have and see if anyone can do the math.
All right, then don't.
Last we counted, I had 23 cars. But like, some of them are kind of parts. Yeah, I know some of them are kind of parts cars, but like, as my wife says, if that's a parts car, why are you driving it back and forth to work every day?
Is your wife cool with that stuff?
Like, my wife builds cars too, so she's got a 944.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that one too.
We're putting an 07K in. Yeah, we're putting an 07K in her 944. She's got a
Boost Brothers stuff, right? The Boost Brothers swap,
yeah, they got a really nice package there. So, and then she daily drives a D4 A8L 4.0 twin turbo. That's a really nice car for what that is. And then she's got an old F100 pickup truck too. So she's got the sickness as well, and you know, she kind of gets it, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, you know, you got to justify your projects. But yeah, I think right now, I mean, I can do the quick count. CQ, D2 S8, D2 S8 parts car, D11, 200 Avant, 200 sedan, but it's a parts car. It doesn't have an engine in it, but whatever. We'll semi-count it. That puts us at 6. I have an Audi 4000 that's sitting in British Columbia that I've never seen. I'll count my wife's A8. Oh shit, RS2.
Right. On the S2. What about I
almost forgot about my S2. So I have.
What about the Tresser, or was that the one without the
engine? And Tresser. So I have 11. I probably forgot one. So yeah.
All right, back to the Jag quick, and then we got to get off this because I gotta get through too much stuff. Have you ever seen? Do you know who Posey is, or have you ever heard of Posey's? Like he's a hot rod builder, Dutch. He's a hot rod builder from
Yeah.
Have you seen his E-Type?
No.
All right, I'm just gonna share this quick, and then you can Google it.
Oh, I have seen this. Yeah. I have seen this. By the way, I'm considering running an inline 5 in my E-Type.
Oh, that's awesome.
So kind of keep it Audi.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
I've got enough spare 7A parts to make like a 350 horsepower, like, turbo build. So
yeah,
which is like perfect for that car. So it'd be kind of fun. People will hate me for it, but whatever.
What if you kept it in the greater family, but not Audi, and did like a W12? Or would that be too wide?
I thought about that too. I've been through
British.
I've been through a lot of different kind of iterations of that. Yeah. So I mean, it's weird because I feel like it really should have an inline 6 in it.
Yeah.
But I don't like BMW engines. I don't know why. I'm just not a BMW guy. I don't know why. I think it's just because of like people I knew who owned BMWs when I was younger. they put a bad imprint in me. But that being said, I like E30s and I like 8 Series and I like 2002s, right? But like I don't really like any of the modern stuff. So when you look at inline 6s, it's kind of difficult. You've got like the 1J, which is a great sounding motor, but I don't know if it really belongs in that car. But I had considered doing a VR6 because it's kind of an inline. It's close. It's a close, narrow V. But then when that came up, I was like, oh, I could do a W12, and then I went down like a really, really, really dark rabbit hole of W12 stuff. So
I bet.
I was gonna put a W12 in my D2 S8 as well because apparently it all speaks to each other in there. So
I met a guy on Larry Webster did like a bunch of like friends driving like West Virginia, being ridiculous. I took my 964 down and went out, and there was a guy there from Detroit. I never caught his name, but he had like a rear wheel drive, like he had a 993 turbo. I think it was like Viper green that he'd repainted, and he pulled it was rear wheel drive. That he tuned, and then he was in the middle of building a Cayman, like an early Cayman W12. So apparently that works too.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's a wide engine, but it's not really that deep. So I guess it would fit well there. So I had dreams of building, like, if you want to get into like just weird packages, I've wanted to build a Vanagon with a PDK Porsche transmission setup with a V8, with an Audi 4.2 V8 behind it. Because it's basically it's basically like Volkswagen parts bin build. All of it will bolt up together and work together. I mean, you'll probably have to run some, ECUs to speak to each other, but technically all the parts will mate in some level. Yeah.
Oh, Legos.
Yeah.
Legos are great. All right. So really quick, because I got the other thing I wanted to check on for the magazine. We're going to do a story on Ken's car too. Can I get a build list or whatever on that one? I know Ken walked through it in one of the videos.
Yeah. So so Ken's car is a Sport Quattro replica. So it was built the same way that they build traditional Sport Quattros, right? You got like half of a 4000 and then half of a coupe kind of packaged together so that you've got the right, you've got the right angle on the A-pillar and so on and so on. It has it's like the carbon Kevlar kit. LCE built the car originally. Most people probably in the Audi community know it as the Turbo Monster. It was originally red, but Ken really, really wanted a white car. So we bought the car. We flew it over. From Germany, and then immediately got it into paint, painted it, and then brought it to SEMA like a week later. So it was stripped the car all the way down. It is also It's about 750 horsepower. It's also a 2.5 liter. My car's actually like 2.6, but this one's built differently. So mine is like punched and stroked. This one is actually running like a Eurovan long, tall block. So that's the setup they've got in this one. So
cool.
But then other than that, I mean, it's all basically Sport Quattro bits. It's running 01E 6-speed. Right now it's got simple cage in it, some Recaros, rear mounts, KW coilovers all around. It's a really nicely sorted car. It's another car that like, it's kind of on that like list of like, the reason, let me just take a step back. The reason we built a replica instead of a real Sport Quattro is because of what we were talking about before.
Right.
It's like, you don't want to take a Sport Quattro and beat it. And like, the reality is the way Ken drives, he may stick this into a snowbank at some point, right? And he's going to want to continue to modify it. And, to get this to do the kind of driving Ken wants to do might mean that he eventually has to put a different transmission in it that's going to require us to cut out the tunnel. And like, those are all things you don't want to do to a Sport Quattro.
Right.
So it's like, we bought this, because it was the look and the feel of a Sport Quattro, but without the like purest element of like, man, like why destroy that car if you don't need to? Right?
Yeah.
Like, you can get something else that looks the
Plus,
part.
I mean, a Sport Quattro nowadays, I don't know what a Rochi would be if there even are any, but like, you're talking about a $500,000 car. So why put that?
It starts at $500,000.
Yeah.
And the rally cars, if they have any sort of history in them, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like I was asking the guys at Tradition, and they were saying that like any of the Sport Quattros that had been raced by any of the drivers, right? So whether it's Hanu or Michelle or Walter, like all of those cars are 2.5 million plus, which is just crazy to think about. Yeah,
that's crazy. I'm curious. We just talked last week too. I don't know if you know Jeff Beta out of Brooklyn.
Sounds funny.
He's got like an Quattro. He's got a replica, and he just bought the car that Buffum had, which is a R27.
Yep.
Yeah, but that car,
I've been following their project on Instagram. That
right?
Looks really cool. That looks really cool.
I went up the day Buffum sold it to him. I never did the math though. Jeff was telling me like that car did Portugal with Michelle in 82 at one, and then it comes over and did Pikes Peak 82. He won his class, and then I think he got at least one of his championships in it. So like that car's got legit provenance that like, I don't know what he paid for it, but it's great to see it stay in the US.
Yeah, it's super, super cool. We when we were at Tradition, we got to see the first Sport Quattro that ran here in the US at Olympus.
Oh, cool.
I was like, man, that's like super cool to see something in Tradition in Germany having like SCCA stickers on it, because it was like running in US Rally. It's like, it's cool to see a lot of that stuff. And, I talked to Timo at Tradition quite a bit, and, like they work really hard in trying to find those cars, right? And, trying to keep them, because sometimes they just either disappear or they just kind of get neglected. And it's a lot of effort that goes into kind of like maintaining them. And I think for a while, like, you always go through a period of time where people don't care about stuff, right? Like there's always a window that like it falls out of like being currently cool or being old enough to be vintage cool. And like, that's when things kind of get destroyed or thrown out, or you pull parts off of them for something else. And, there's a lot of cars out there that are like that. So,
yeah. Well, he still has in this too, up at his shop. Yeah. Buffum does.
Nice. Buffum's great, by the way.
He is legit old school, like in a very cool
way. Oh yeah. I've worked with Buffum a bunch in rally, and like every time I see him, it's like the first time he met me again. He's just like, what is this? Yeah, I will forever just be like some shitty little whippersnapper to him, I feel like, no matter what. But the guy's done so much in the world of rally in America. He can be the way he is. He's the guy. The dude knows more about tires than like an entire industry has forgotten. It's crazy the kind of tech and the stuff he knows. And yeah, and he's been a lot of fun to be around and work around. So
he's a cool guy. All right, so we'll get more details, I guess, from you guys on Ken's car. So before we move on from that car, I got two questions. the wheels.
Yep.
You guys modeled those on the S1E2?
Yep. So when I was traveling and we were at Tradition, there's a rack of all the wheels. So like, there's all this part of Tradition that people
in the
see,
warehouse.
and then there's like layers and layers of hidden Tradition. So like if you go visit Audi in Ingolstadt, you can go to the museum, right?
Yeah.
If you know somebody, you can get into Tradition, right?
Right.
But then if you really know somebody, you can like really deep dive into like the storage area and
see
and a bunch of stuff.
The shelves with like the R8 LMP1 motors and the
all that stuff's great. And while we were there was one of these wheels with the tire off, and it was like hollow spoke and like all this stuff. Cool. I just never knew about it. And I took a bunch of photos, and I came back and sent the photos to Brian Henderson and Jason Whipple, and I'm like, can we make a wheel that looks like this? And they were like, well, it already kind of looks like the ROC, which is the wheel that they had. Yeah. And they were like, but we can modify it to look more like this. So some of the standout pieces on making the wheel like that was where the lugs are, like the dog bowl had like this really, really deep presence to it, and it had like this rib around it that was kind of but the part about it that I liked the most was that the size of the wheel and a bunch of like random specs were just like engraved on the wheel.
Yep.
And it's such a like
very functional
function over fashion race car thing to do. Like, I don't know, just write the name on the wheel. Like everything we need to know, just put it on the front, right? And there was something I just loved about it because it was the opposite of how people normally treat wheels. So, obviously we put the Hoonigan Rotiform branding on it, but we also actually put the sizing on it on both the wheels, and it was just kind of gave it a very different look because usually you don't see that's usually what you put on the back of the wheel, right? But in motorsports you don't care, right? You put it on the front, you can see it stands out a lot more on the gray wheel. So plus these are much deeper because I'm running like a 315 versus Ken's I think running like a 275. So right. Yeah, and then it was just like all these like extra kind of like ridges and edges that the wheel had. It was the best way to explain it was that the wheel just had this like, it's almost rudimentary in design. Like, yeah, it's 5 spokes. It does its job. Like, it doesn't look like anyone really like sat there and said, I'm going to make the most beautiful wheel possible. But in turn, kind of made to me what I think is like the coolest wheel. And it's funny, like, I don't know if you know the designer Kaisa.
Yeah.
Like, he's been putting this wheel on everything he renders recently.
Oh, really?
Because he's like, this is my favorite wheel. I'm like, it's literally the wheel a child would draw.
Well,
to be like, this is what a wheel looks like. It's got 5 spokes, but it works, But
the simplicity, and I find like in graphic design, I'm seeing a lot more of the kind of like label style, like small font, hard to read, but like it just kind of adds to the richness of the design.
Well, it's weird. I mean, that's like, Virgil Abloh, like, that was a big style for him, was to like write on something what it was, like it's a label called a label, right? And it seems so weird to do that, but there's something kind of cool about it.
Nah, definitely. I dig it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to me, the wheels really kind of set the car apart. I remember like when the kit first went on, the car came back and it was sitting on my original wheels, and obviously they were all sucked in and everything, but looking at it, it was like, oh, all right, I don't know, like the kit just felt too big, and I actually was like, man, I think when I made a mistake, I kind of missed the narrow body. And then the minute that we bolted the wheels on and put the Toyo tires on, we're like, oh yeah, this looks the part. Like, it all just sort of kind of came together, and it gave it such a tough look. Like, it really looks like a hill climb car because hill climb cars are all about as much traction as you can possibly put, and that means running a tire that is almost to a point, ridiculously wide. It's what you have, right? And that's kind of the Berg Cup cars and all of that. So, hey, look, it's James Pumphrey and Jamie Orr in the background.
Just the people you see hanging out at the Hoonigan Club days. These Dennis shot a couple while he was there, so I got to grab from that. I got to talk to Rotiform guys, and maybe we'll see if we can get a set of those for the sweepstakes car we're giving away. We got like an Quattro that we're. It's
crazy because I actually didn't realize these wheels are for sale until yesterday. Because because Jason Whipple sent me a photo of the wheels being made in 19s, and I was like, "What are those for?" He's like, "A customer." I was like, "Wait, you can buy those?" He's like, "Yeah, they're on the store." I was like, "He's like, why would we make you a wheel you can't sell?" I'm like,
Do you feel less exclusive?
I feel way less special now.
What are they going on? Do you know? Did he say?
I don't know actually. There's one project he told me about that I can't share,
Right.
but it's not an Audi, but it's actually another well-known driver who's putting them on their car. But yeah, I was just a bit surprised to be like, oh, cool, people are buying them. That's rad. So
I guess. Actually, I was chatting with him and we were debating whether or not to put a set of wheels on. We have this Quattro we're giving away in our sweepstakes, just 20 valve 85.
Yep.
And it's at the moment, I mean, Ronal's like perfect on those cars and the proportions are right and everything else. So on one hand, I'm apprehensive. On the other hand, adding something to it might make sense. And like, I think he and I were both of the opinion it's got to be something simple, something period correct and works. And this one kind of does.
It does. I will say the one thing is, and Jason's going to kill me when I say this because I don't know if they've got the forging for it, but if you can go 17, I think you should, or even if you can go 16. Because I feel like 18s are just too big.
I asked him that. Agreed. So what did you put on Ken's? Were they 8? I think they were.
We put in 18. We put in 18 because the brake kit that's currently on the car is really big. But I think at some point in the future, I'd really like to see the car on 15s. To be quite honest, the problem is though is that 15s are almost too small for like a good tire. But the 16-inch market is like non-existent for tires anymore. Like we just kind of lost like good 16-inch tires.
Pirelli does a 15 for the Quattro. So like
I know. That's why like the 15 may be a good one. And there's also like because of muscle car fitments, like you can still get a decent sized tire in a 15.
Right.
But to me, I just think that those cars look best on like a 15 or a 16.
Yeah, I think to me for an Quattro, I mean something that's like when you do a body kit, I mean the Sport Quattro is kind of doing it. It's funny how putting that car next to yours, how even the Sport Quattro almost looks tame given the width of.
What's crazy is that my wheels look small, right? Like not small, but I wanted 17s, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't have forgings for 17s because of like supply demands right now, you know." But what I didn't realize was that the guys at Pryor's redrew the arch to fit.
So it's a bigger arch.
Yeah, so it's kind of like how like my 911 is. My 911's radiused.
Right.
So my 911 looks impossibly low, but yet still, you know, doesn't tuck rim, right? Like you still see tire.
Right.
And it's because we lifted the fenders, you know, like 2 inches on the car. So, you know, it has that touring car look where the car lowers, but the arch goes up.
Right.
You don't look like slammed. It looks like it fits right, you know, and while the car's low, it gives it that aesthetic because I can't stand cars where you can't see the tires. So it's just a weird thing.
Is it terrible that is it terrible that you think that? Because I think that too. And I get every time I go to like White Show, it doesn't happen anymore.
But when I get old,
maybe so. Well, like
we're old because I got guys here who literally drive their wheels like into their rims and burn through their fenders, and that's cool. And I'm old. My Rabbit, every time I post it, people are like, when are you gonna lower it? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's already lowered.
Yeah, Corona Steely's, it's perfect. But no, it's mechanical empathy. I don't want to say it's age. I say this as a guy with a Santa beard, but like it can't just be age. Like mechanical empathy. Every time I see the rusting out fenders and like, you know, like I don't know. It's maybe you don't have that problem in California.
No, but for me, it's more just like an aesthetic thing. Like it just once something looks not functional, I'm not into it anymore. Right. Yeah. So like the crazy camber cars, like I don't care. Like if you want to build a car with camber, like good for you, man. If that makes you happy, awesome. But to me, it just doesn't look functional, right? Like I've had cars that low. I mean, my Volkswagen Golf was really low when I was younger. And it's like, it made the car like impossible to drive. Like I ended up driving, you're always driving it slow because you're like worried about potholes, where like you raise it up just a little bit. And like, I remember because there were those guys who used to say that to me when I was like 22 and I'm like, whatever, old man. And now I'm that old man, you know, it's like, I mean, my RS2 is pretty low. And like, I'm like, I gotta raise it up. And like, that's when you know you're old. When it's one thing when you're like, I'm not gonna lower it too much, but when you actually start lifting it back up is a problem. Yeah. See, there you go.
Well,
Like
so
that
Brian,
is the limit of how low it should be. And
did you raise it, or is that how you bought it?
that's how I bought it. And that was
Brian's
those are Brian Henderson's old wheels, but the car belonged to somebody else.
Right.
Whose name I forget. But Brian had bought this car and then decided he didn't want it, and it was sitting at JP's in Germany. And I was one of those things where I wasn't gonna not buy it. It was he gave me a good deal. I'm also not a huge fan of poked faces. This car has poked faces on it, but I do really like that phone dial. So at some point, when Jason Whipple's got some extra time, I'm gonna make him repackage that and rebuild those lips for me. Because I like the phone dial on the RS. I think as long as you have like a Porsche look wheel, but I've also ordered some original stock cups for it, because there's something about the RS2 just looks really good on cups. I bought this and I also bought an S2, and my plan is to keep this one pretty much 100% stock. I'm gonna do like a slight turbo upgrade, just having the stock turbo rebuilt with like a little bit of a little extra on it, and then I'm gonna sort out the wheels on it, and then pretty much just keep that exactly as is. But then the S2 I'm gonna have a little bit of fun with. So
the wheel,
nothing too great, because I've already got obviously the coupe, but
yeah, you gotta have one.
I bought two of the same car. You know what that's like to explain to your wife? I literally was like, I bought an S2 Avant and I bought an RS2,
and they came back on the same ship
5 days, and that's what I came home with.
And they came back on the same ship.
They came home on the same ship. Yeah.
Fortunately, not the Felicity Ace.
Yeah, definitely not the Felicity Ace. Trust me, that the funny thing is because our cars came back on a Volkswagen ship.
Yeah, via Jamie.
So through Jamie. So it could have very well have been the Felicity Ace. So when I saw that, it wasn't funny to me.
Okay, so this conversation went long, so I'm cutting it off here, and we're going to run it in two parts. Sorry about that, but it's a great conversation. It goes on through like Felicity Ace and fires on car transport ships in the Mid-Atlantic to YouTube and the art of making a channel or making content on YouTube versus what the algorithm likes. And love Brian, love talking to him. So we're going to run that in a second episode in another week. So thanks for stopping, and see you in a week for the rest of this conversation.